ourselves, being in DC, I'm privy to a lot of the problems that we saw back in the 80s and that we still see are so much worse today. And what I mean by that is, there's a real disconnect right now between arms control and nuclear disarmament. We have to be honest, there's some people in the arms control movement that have a nice paycheck right now, and it's not in their best interest for us to have nuclear disarmament. And the tragedy is they're the ones that have the purse strings. They're the ones that have the money. And in many cases, they're intersection of patriarchy. We have to be honest with ourselves that in a lot of this movement, there is still dominated by white men. And women are still fighting for a seat at the table. People of color are still fighting for a seat at the table, and most of all, millennials are fighting for a seat at that table. I am amazed every day what somebody like Kate Alexander does for peace action on a shoestring budget. Imagine what she would do if she had the money that some of these larger think tanks have to really organize students. This young female just came over here from Tufts. Imagine what she could do with real resources. This is something that we have to address, we have to look at. We have to think about how can we reach these groups? How do we build coalitions of Black Lives Matter? Half the battle is just showing up. Just listening. Right? If they see that we're constantly there, then they'll be for us. Seeing how these things are interconnected. The first book I wrote is because I'm hoping that if white peace activists that didn't know African Americans were interested in this pick up my book, they'll see the connections, and vice versa. And my African American students, when they'll see that Huey Newton and Angela Davis and Melvin and so many others that they look up to actually care about nuclear weapons, they'll get invested in it. And so, in closing, yes, we are fighting on a lot of fronts, and that's a problem for a lot of my students. They're trying to put food on the table, and student loans, hope to God they don't get killed by the police on the way home from school. And then nuclear weapons is still abstract. They grew up with war. They were 2 years old when 9/11 happened. They don't know a world without it. And so they're just trying to survive. So we have to work to see how can we get them to care about this issue. Is it that we need to rebrand peace? Right? And make them realize that peace isn't weak. We have to show how it's connected, nuclear testing, environmental racism. These are the questions we have to ask ourselves. And so in closing is, yes, we have to fight for LGBT rights, we have to fight for women's rights, we have to fight for Black Lives Matter, for Native Americans. But as Dr. King said, what does it matter if we achieve social justice if we're all dead from nuclear war? And now is the time. Now is when we capitalize it. Not just because of nuclear ban, but because we have two people right now. Two races, two white nationalist authoritarians with 90% of the world's nuclear weapons in Putin and Trump. There is no, and then you have over 130 countries that are mostly non-white in the UN trying to ban the bomb. There's no bigger connection of race and nuclear weapons than right now. And so we need to do this. So let me just say that when we step back and we look at intersectionality, we look at all of these movements, we'll realize how so many people before us did, most notably Malcolm X, who probably understood it best. That for all of us, in all of these different movements, the issue is, was, and remains truly, so that all of us have universal human rights. Thank you.